What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Tapped In Indy Wrestling. I'm your host, Heath Mullican, joined by the man behind the controls, Mr. Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It's an early Monday. Let's start this week off right. Talking some wrestling, man. That's a lot of indie wrestling this past weekend for sure.
That's right. And fans, if you're wondering, what in the world? We're going weekly. That's right. And to get our episodes every week, to stay up to date, you got to go to YouTube. You got to hit that like button. You got to hit that subscribe button. And then you are not going to miss anything. If you just like the audio, we are everywhere that audio podcasts are: iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, probably broadcasting to the moon. And you can also support us at patreon.com/tapped-out-pod, where you're going to get all the episodes early, plus bonus content. Speaking of bonus content, holy cow, you were a man on a mission last week. Lots of great interviews, lots of discussions with fans and wrestlers alike. But two interviews we wanted to hit on featured the two young men from the Exotic Youth, one featuring Bryce Cannon.
Yeah, that was that was kind of it was interesting the way that developed. Bryce had a lot of stuff going on. The rumors were out there. And Bryce reached out and was like, "Hey man, you want to do this as an announcement?" And I was like, "Here's the thing. I appreciate the kid's talent so much that I was like, dude, absolutely. I mean, no problem." And so we kind of, we made it the big deal it was. I mean, because
Yes.
I mean, people don't quite understand that that Bryce Cannon's injury that's going to keep him out for a significant period. It shakes up the singles division and the tag team division literally in one hit. Because Exotic Youth, look, I know they'll go forward with Pep will fill in, Cornelius Pepperbottom will fill in, and they'll have some tag with him and Zach. But Bryce Cannon was considered by most, and I'm saying, there's a lot of people out there who had the opinion that Bryce Cannon was the best, wrestler. He was, for every Wrestler of the Year award type of thing, he was up for that talk. And we also joked at for how in the world that we also had Exotic Youth as one of the top tag teams in the state. So we talked about this a little bit off air, and it was almost like this creates so much opportunity with one injury that now there's the top, if not one of the top, spots in singles competition and the tag team division all in one thing. And that's just a lot of opportunity for a lot of talents out there.
I was just thinking about this as you were talking. This makes maybe the third year in a row that a top wrestler, you had the year that Joe Black kind of tore his Achilles heel and was out for a few months. You had Cruel last year with the injury. And now Bryce Cannon, it's almost, if you're in that number one spot in the first quarter, it's almost like your snake bit. But I definitely appreciate Bryce coming on and with us and with you. And I think that says a lot about your work and this podcast. And obviously, man, our thoughts and prayers, well wishes to go out to that young man.
Yeah.
And you could tell in that interview, obviously a little bit discouraged, but fired up and ready to go.
Here's
to
the crazy thing.
I
don't know if it gave off that vibe, and I hope it didn't, because I didn't get that at all from him. He is taking it as positively as you can, as you possibly could.
Right.
And look, there's so many little things that there's some stuff we talked about on air and off air, and it kind of blurs together. So I kind of walk a fine line of I don't want to say that because I don't want to, But I think there's a part of Bryce Cannon that sees this as, okay, there's an opportunity here to X and whatever those X, is. I was really, really, happy for it. And like I said, that again, we always joke about why do you want to have YouTube notifications turned on? Because you don't know when an interview with Zach Mosley. Listen, let's back up. Within 1 week, we had Matt Griffin of Action
Yes.
Glacier promoting the Unbreakable Bunch movie, Zach Mosley talking coastal, Empire Wrestling and all things Exotic Youth, and then literally a couple days later, it's Bryce Cannon making the big announcement that he about his injury. Like that was all within a week.
Yeah, maybe a better word is that Bryce was disappointed,
Sure,
obviously, and not discouraged. I think you're right. I think he's going to come back better than ever. It was also interesting your interview with Zach Mosley to hear him talk about Coastal Empire Wrestling, where I believe Bryce is still going to be involved there, kind of on the business side of things in the booking. But it was a great interview with Zach. He got fired up talking about Gary Lamb and Southern Honor.
It was funny to watch the switch flip from business to personal, right? And that's kind of one of the things that we want to bring to the table is like, yeah, we can do both. So we get it. I mean, look, it's business, but it's also wrestling. And so we kind of want to lean into that as well. And yeah, I mean, it was fun to do. I mean, I really enjoy those type of things. I like, and reason we kind of are putting this out here. We want to be that platform. Like when I'm going to show, like I went to shows this weekend and I'm like, hey, if you want to promote X or if you want to do this or you want to like reach out to us, we will do our best, between the three of us right now to put something together and do it so we can help put your product out there. Hey, by the way, if you're a wrestler, you are your product. So that's something to keep, it's not just promoters and business, it's actually wrestlers and so forth that we want to try to help put that kind of stuff out there. And we can go whichever way the direction you want to go. You'll leave it at that, what that means, but we can do it however you want to do it. So, again, wrestlers, talents, promoters, reach out to us for that, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Listeners and watchers, turn that notification bell on because remember, the interviews, I would say 95% of the interviews, they're not going to audio. They're just going to be just on YouTube and on Patreon. So,
Right. As you mentioned earlier, it was a crazy busy weekend in the Carolinas and Georgia. Myron traveled to Gastonia for Superstar Wars Wrestling. Sorry, it's the Indy Rewind. We got to look back on the weekend. Sorry, I forgot the segue there. So Superstars Wars Wrestling is a little bit of a different promotion. They have definitely had some hiccups. Back in 2021, they had what I refer to as the Black Christmas debacle. I don't know that they're ever going to fully recover from that. I don't know if they ever paid everybody fully from that. But they kind of run, spot shows. They don't really have a roster. They don't have their own champions, but Myron seemed to have a great time at the show.
Yeah. I mean, look, it was, friend of the show, Dave was up there. He was promoting, he was managing Barbarian. So Myron went representing the podcast. I was tied up and ended up, luckily got freed up to go to Southern Fried later that day. But yeah, I mean, it's, it looked like it was just it was filled with nostalgia, Barbarian and, Tugboat, Fred Oddman and all that kind of stuff. And Tommy Rich was there, another friend of the show. We love Tommy. But yeah, so it looked like that was kind of the wheelhouse they kind of live in, I guess, in that promotion. So
they also had I guess a visit from the current lieutenant governor of North Carolina who's running for governor. And that actually caused a delay in the start time of the show. So that was pretty interesting. NAWA, which normally runs in North Carolina, not to be confused with NAW Day in Georgia. They ran a show in Lancaster. That was a good fundraiser there for a local baseball team. Heath Slater, or formerly known as Heath Slater. Anytime I see Heath on a poster, I tell everybody, yeah, that's not me. I won't be appearing at that show. Viral came back with a vengeance. And they're running at a new location at the Warren Road Community Center there in Augusta, Georgia. And it was a super night. Heard great reports, great crowd. Buff and Fluff beat the E&D for the tag team titles. That makes Sean Legacy Triple Crown winner there. Outbreak champion, heavyweight champion, now tag team champion. Reka Tahaka defeated Dream Girl Ellie for the women's championship. And John Davis, after months and months of chasing and being, kind of Owen Knight's bodyguard and then being his enemy. John Davis finally got over the hump and won that Viral Pro Wrestling heavyweight title. We'll talk about him more later. The question is, what does this mean for the front office? The faction that Joshua Hancock, the owner, had formed. We know that Lodi's kind of bought into the promotion and making some decisions. What does this mean for Owen Knight? He'd been fighting a long time to be heavyweight champion and had a pretty short title reign. So it almost feels like a fresh start for Viral, but we'll see going forward.
But in a way, I know this sounds – I know a lot of people, because I'll say it, like, look, there was, some of it you're kind of like, oh, we always like to say when something happens and it kind of doesn't necessarily follow like what had been going on and you're kind of confused by it. I typically like to say, well, let's see what happens next month before we completely judge it, right?
Right.
But like you said, the people that we knew that were there loved it. They were entertained, and it wasn't like, look, it almost makes sense that moving to the new location and everything, like, hey, look, we're going to just reboot, reset. Let me ask you, because you know better than I, how far apart was the old location and the new location?
I want to say maybe 15, 20 minutes from they were running in Thompson, the Sweetwater gym. So maybe 15, 20 minutes, and the Warren Road Community Center where they run, where Phoenix Wrestling Experience runs, and where IWE runs, all within like a 5 to 8 minute radius of each other, right there in Augusta. So I mean, Augusta's kind of a hotbed for wrestling right now. And so again, to hear reports from people, hey, this, kind of the booking didn't make sense, but what a great show. Like, they didn't have a problem with the booking, but like, if you look at it these are people that have been long-term fans, but they gave the show rave reviews, especially when you talk about people with kids and their kids are like, man, that was a good show. That's what you want. So I think Viral, they'll have in June their Garden City Classic tournament for the first time in a long time. So I'm excited to see that. Arn Anderson and Brock Anderson will be there as part of that tournament. So I think Viral's, like you said, it feels like a new thing. It feels like a new start. And Joshua Hancock's a pretty determined guy, so never bet against them.
Yeah, I think it always boils back to if the fans had a great time.
Right.
Thumbs up, kudos, keep it rolling. Because here's my thing. Even if the stories are wonky at times, you can write that ship. It's harder. It's easier to work on creative than it is to like pull your fans back. If you start losing the fans, then you got a problem.
Right.
So, but yeah, like I said, everybody that we talked to that was there seemed to really enjoy the show. So that's all I really care about, to be honest with you.
Right. And Augusta, definitely something to keep our eye on. So you had the opportunity to go to Southern Fried Championship Wrestling, and it was a big night there. Lots of things happening.
Yeah, Southern Fried, they're at 405 Community Court in Monroe. That's crazy. I know the address off the top of my head now.
Mm-hmm.
You can start to see, and we always talk about storytelling. Now, I don't know that there are many, if any, that do it better than Todd Sexton. And you can, like, I'm sitting there watching this show going, I can already start seeing the chess pieces on the board moving to set up. Look, their big show every year is Shindig. Look, I don't remember the exact date of it yet, but you could see the chess pieces moving into place of like, all right, the table's being set. You can see it. The big story angle. Look, we talked about this on. It was here last week, right? About where you have the strength of some promotions where there's somebody they believe in and somebody that the owners. And that crowd is just so behind and so supportive of David Manders.
Yeah.
The second they're teasing this, look, something's clearly playing out between him and Nick Halen and the approved. When David Manders hits the ring and does a little bit of an interference thing, the crowd went bananas. So I'm like, two things. One, I'm like, okay, we're clearly heading to something with Nick Halen involved with David Manders. Two, the crowd's already eating it up. I can't imagine how hot they'll be by the time we get to like a Shindig for something that's going to clearly have to go down at that point. So
right.
Yeah. Go ahead. I actually, there was a lot of stuff. By the way, I didn't even put this on our notes, but the main event, Hawkins versus Judas for the Southern Fried Champion. We're going to talk a little bit about Judas here later. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. Brawl, that was just insane. Listen, when that goes up, that'll probably be a match that I put up on our YouTube channel, if I get their permission, obviously. That I really, really enjoyed it. But while I was there, I wanted to mention, I tell you what I like to do. And if you could do this, try this when you go to a show. Sit somewhere next to, or close to a little kid and just try to look through the eyes of that kid while you're watching it.
Yeah.
Look, Mason Andrews, they had a show in Royston, in his appreciation. He put out a list, and he's a young kid.
Yeah.
By the way, he's got a YouTube channel where he's putting out content where it's his dad is recording content of him at shows.
Oh, wow.
So follow his YouTube channel, Mason Andrews, Money Mason Andrews on YouTube, because then you could wrap your head around hey, this is what it's like through the eyes of a child.
Right.
And say, because I think there's a piece of us, and I think we all agree with this, there's a piece of us that we okay, we need a little bit of that back from us as a kid. Mm-hmm. We joked about it on one of the other that WrestleMania moment where, there's certain moments that'll take you back to being like a 10-year-old kid.
Right.
Find that kid when you're watching wrestling, because I think, to me, that's a pretty big thing. But I want to ask your opinion on something. I saved this for last. I know you're looking at the notes going, is he going to forget? No, I wanted to really ask your opinion. So when we were watching everything unfold at WrestleMania with The Rock and the Cody and they were blurring those lines and realities creeping into wrestling, there was a spot that happened, and I don't know if I want to even call it a spot. There was something that happened at Southern Fried. Mm-hmm. Crystal Rose was wrestling in a mixed tag match. It was Matt Sells and her versus Rose Gold and Vanderbilt. Nathan Vanderbilt, I think's his name. But after the match, skipped all of the details. Kat Spencer, who's been feuding with Crystal Rose, basically comes out choking out her kid.
Wow.
Done very protected, so don't overreact, everybody. I know everybody would probably want to. But after that, the icing on the cake, and this is Todd's strength to me. Mm-hmm. Todd comes out and is just irate that this whole thing happens. He's yelling at commentary. He's just yelling at everybody.
Right.
And it's like, oh, for that moment, you're like, oh, the average fan's like, was that not supposed to happen? Like, what,
right.
And you're like, oh, they got him. They got him good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really good. Really good. And like I said, just icing on the cake for Todd. That's my take on it. But
there have been a couple of times as a fan, there was a couple of times when I was running the camera ringside. There was a couple of times on commentary where I was not smartened up to what was about to happen. And I was hook, line, and sinker. And either whether it was an injury angle or what in the world was that really supposed to happen? What is going on right here? Those are, you can't do those too often. You can't, there came a time in wrestling where it felt like every match they were throwing up an X and it was a fake, really wasn't an injury. I didn't like that. I know they just did this Super Card of Honor with Billy Starks, where they did this, this lengthy, they're getting ready to cart her out of the ring and she rolls the girl up and it's a fake. Anyway. But when you do that, perfect timing and blur that line, it kind of keeps people honest. Yep. Keeps your fans honest. So I'm excited to look at that. Watch that video. You mentioned kids. One thing, whenever I had control over where the commentary table was going to be, I tried to be intentional about sitting kids right next to us for two reasons. Number one, I tried to set up where the wrestlers came in and your natural tendencies to go right. So they would come by us, they would go right, and that group of kids is right there. So the kids are going to they're going to get to see the wrestlers, high five, whatever. But also on the commentary, you hear that buzz, you hear that noise, and it comes through the microphones, but it also feeds my energy that, hey, this is who I'm doing it for. I'm not doing it for the keyboard warrior, that's got, Cheetos all over his lips. I'm doing it for this kid sitting right here. Mm-hmm. And it just reminds you, man, when the kid is hooked, that's what it's all about, and good stuff. So I'm excited. I hope to get the date for Shindig soon. I've never been to a Shindig, so I'm hopeful to get to go to that. SCA, we've been talking about them because they're every week. They had around 50, kind of down from that week before. Maybe we're starting to see, Georgia Outlaw had their first show yesterday on Sunday. Maybe we're starting to see kind of the challenge of running 3 promotions at the Royston Dome. Can the population sustain it? How are they going to rotate it? We know Georgia Outlaw is going to be Sunday, June 9th. Anarchy, their first show there is going to be Saturday, June 22nd. So how do you think they need to kind of work this to make it, to get people there for all the shows?
So it looks like if those dates hold up, it essentially looks like they're going to at least try to put a week between Anarchy and Georgia Outlaw. Mm-hmm. That's a plus. I 100% like that idea. Look, I don't know if he would want me to say it, so I'm not going to say who came up with this idea, but somebody actually was talking to me, and I said, that's a great idea. Like, I don't know what the guidelines are, because we talked about this a little bit. Does SCA have to run every week, or do they choose to run every week? Would the rotation be better served to say, like, the first week of the month, SCA runs. The next week, they don't run, but Outlaw runs. Then the next week, SCA runs again, and then nobody else. And then the next week, it's like Anarchy and only them, and just kind of rotated every 4 weeks where they're running like that. I think that would help. I really look at I'm the first one to tell you, I'm completely wrong. I hope I'm completely wrong. I just see it's very challenging, and I'm not saying it can't be done. It's very challenging to run in one building 6 shows. I mean, think about it. 6 shows a month. That's going to be a tough sell. Just because I don't know if the population's dense enough to maintain that. That's my question.
Right.
But we're going to find out. I mean, that's the other thing. We're going to find out. So, but I do wish maybe there was a rotation there to kind of spread out and so it wasn't an oversaturation. So we'll tell. Time will tell. I'll throw my hands up and say time will tell.
Right. Well, Anarchy drew very well in Monroe at the Southern Fried venue. The question when it comes to Anarchy, are they going to be able to create that same vibe at the Royston Dome that they had in Cornelia? And I don't know the answer to that. And there's just so many questions right now, and really it doesn't sound like we're going to get any answers until June when we see the full rotation of these shows.
Let me ask you this, because this is a business question. That's where my mind typically runs to. If you run the Royston Dome and you're Anarchy, I hope they do way better. I'm just kind of channeling in my head. If you draw 150, were you better off? And I'm assuming the rent's probably higher and all the other costs that come with it. I don't know. Would you be better served to continue to run in Monroe, asked to run in Monroe, if you were drawing 250 every show, or better? And I don't know. That's a good question.
Here's the thing. If I'm David Manders, I don't want Anarchy running regularly in my building.
Not monthly. No, I agree. Yeah, monthly, no.
Bi-monthly, like if Anarchy wanted to do their quarterly pay-per-view in Monroe. I think that makes some sense. But if I'm David Manders, I really want to protect, because here's the thing, a lot of his talent works Anarchy. And that's where things get diluted and confusing. Right. And I think that's going to be the thing the Royston Dome has to fight. There's a lot of crossover between SCA and Georgia Outlaw Wrestling. A lot of crossover. And if Anarchy comes in and they're using those same guys, what are we doing? What's the point? We want to see, I would love to see Anarchy.
Listen, hey, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was talking to a fan, and it was brought to my attention. He was like, if I can see insert wrestler on Friday and Saturday, like, I don't know that I'm going to, especially if it's your favorite wrestler. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's funny. Here, I'm going to use it. Like, Nick Halen's everybody's favorite wrestler, in Northeast Georgia. So if I can see him on Friday and I can see him on Saturday, I would probably pay to see him twice. But some of the casual average fan may not. They're like, look, they're look, money's tight. We can't go every single night. So does that start picking and choosing, like you were talking about, between shows? Here's the thing: we keep coming back to. We hope and I don't know that we're right or wrong. We're guessing and just speculating. I hope that they all three are drawing 200 soon. That there's a buzz because all these talents are coming in and they're drawing 200 plus. I mean, that'd be awesome. But we have to be realistic with the look. This is going to be a challenge. So,
and here's the thing too: once Anarchy gets going, if Nick Halen continues to be your champion, Nick Halen can't go to the Royston Dome on Friday night and lose to anybody. Like, I mean, he can lose, but he can't lose in the first match.
If the perception of, at that point, you have to treat it like he's a main event guy. So if SCA wants to use him, just so you are aware, he's a main event guy. If Outlaw tries to bring him in, hey, he's a main event guy. He's not losing to, somebody. If he's losing to anybody, it's one of your main event guys, something to that effect. There's the challenge. That's, like you said, that's the one we want to talk about. Like, you have to protect positions of talents as well, not just promotions.
Maybe we'll talk about this a little later, but like a main event guys in one promotion aren't necessarily main event guys in other promotions.
No, 100%. Yeah, that's no knock. That's just the fact. I mean, it is what it is. So,
yeah. Speaking of main events and drives, let's talk about making the drives. We got some big shows coming up this upcoming weekend. Super excited for Friday. You mentioned your interview with Matt Griffin. Action Wrestling down there in Tyrone, Georgia. A couple of really great matches I want to point out. One I'm really excited for, because I've never seen something like this live. Matt Sells and Jaden Newman are challenging the Good Hand, Shug D, and Kevin Ryan for the Action Tag Team titles. And whoever gets pinned or taps out is going to lose their hair. And Matt Griffin told you he's already got the clippers, the legitimate clippers, to make this happen.
And no bait and switch here. Somebody's leaving bald. That was his thing to me. He was like, look, this is not one of those things where, hey, we're promising something, and no, he said they are delivering. And look, it's a bold move, but on the other hand, it's a positive move that you're gonna live up. It's one of the worst things ever for me is when promotions do something and then they don't quite deliver on it. They come up, they do something, and you're like, hey, that's not what you said. Kind of what we said. No, that's not what you said. But
well, it kind of goes back. One of the hottest angles Memphis ever did was the feud between Jerry Lawler and Austin Idol, Tommy Rich, I think Paulie Dangerously or Paul Heyman. And they did this big cage match. Tommy Rich comes out from under the ring. Lawler loses, and he's supposed to lose his hair. And they just kind of gave him a crew cut. Yeah. And I remember Mark and I talking about it one time that really hurt Memphis. And that was kind of when Memphis was really starting to lose steam, and people pointed to that. Well, you said he was going to shave his head, and just kind of gave him a haircut.
Yeah, finger poke of doom.
Right. Two guys that could not do a hair versus hair match is Adam Priest versus Cruel. Neither of those guys has enough hair to cut, but I am excited to see this match live and in living color for the IWTV World Heavyweight title.
Cruel is a spectacle that must be seen in person. I tell people that all the time. TV doesn't do him justice. That persona, because it's not even, I always tell people that that's not a gimmick, that's not a character, that persona, because it just, when it's like, that's what I mean by when you see him in person, there's an old, I said this on one of our shows recently, there's a quote by some musician I won't name because he's polarizing, but it's like, it's like you can see it, you can hear it, but can you feel it? Right. That kind of thing. And Cruel is one of those like moments in wrestling. Like, it's funny because it's like, it's wrestling. Yeah, let him get close to you. It kind of, I'm like, it gives off a vibe, dude. I promise you. So yeah, he's always one that and look, Adam Priest, man, he's crushing it everywhere. I got a feeling we'll talk about him a little bit more, but yeah, Adam Priest is one that's for sure. That match, here's the crazy thing. That might be the match I'm looking forward to the most. Out of all the other things we're going to talk about, that one might be the one I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, that match is, as I say on commentary a lot, a contrast in styles. This next match, however, not a contrast in styles, going to be a fantastic match. Mustafa Ali versus Landon Hale. What a great opportunity for Landon Hale and for fans to see Mustafa Ali live and in living color.
Yeah, he's all over the indies right now, man. He's tearing up the circuit for sure, which is good for him. I always tell wrestlers when they get released, and I'm like, don't waste any time and go get that indie money while you that name value's still there and you're hot. By the way, it's not like he's pretty good in the ring. I don't know if people have ever noticed that. So yeah, this one will be just. I think this is probably where everybody's like, oh, this will be the match of the night, the show stealer, that kind of thing. But that's just because depending on what you like the most.
Here, let's talk about this real quick. We always talk about Action being known for their in-ring work. So, but if you look at those three matches we just named, like obviously Ali and Hale, that's what we would expect from Action. But those other two matches kind of show that Action, they're broadening their horizons, and that's a win for everybody.
Let me ask you a question. Matt Griffin's probably going to clip this when I say this.
Yeah.
Or does that say the perception of Action and us and all the people that have that perception, we've been wrong the whole time? Like, Matt Sells he's a mainstay there. He gets a great reaction. Matt Sells, my fourth favorite wrestler in Georgia. Everybody knows, but like, he's not a technical, like that sense of the word, but he's a mainstay there. So that tells you like, maybe we've been wrong this whole time. Look, maybe that's what they excel at. Maybe that's what they're known for, but that's not what they are.
If you go back to the year Matt Sells won Male Performer of the Year, it was 99% due to his run in Action. That huge losing streak really propelled him. And I think we would both say, how do I say this? Oh my goodness. We would both say, and we have said, that in other areas of awarding recognition, maybe that's a way to say it, Action has been sorely underappreciated and underrepresented. And I'm, like I said, I'm excited to see it with my own eyes, not just on IWTV. And I think Matt Griffin, man, he's just putting the pedal to the metal. It's almost like he has a chip on his shoulder, and it's pretty exciting to see.
Hey, so this is your first Action show, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to SCI a couple times, but I've never been to an Action show.
Here's the crazy thing. This is going to be my first Action show. Myron's done one. I've never done one in person either. So this will be our first Action show. Yeah.
How about that? A wrestling podcast in Georgia where the guys actually go to the shows in Georgia. That's pretty incredible. Speaking of shows in Georgia, you're going to be heading to Monroe on Saturday night for
Buford,
Disruptor's next show.
Buford, up at Tannery Row in Buford.
What did I
Sorry,
say?
You said Monroe. You were thinking where I was at last week. I was in Monroe at Southern Fried. But yeah,
Buford.
Buford at Tannery Row. Yeah.
Tanner, one of the best venues to watch a wrestling show because you get to eat your wings while you're watching wrestling.
Listen, I know you're not a drinker, but like you can get a beer, you can get a mixed drink, you can drink good food. I will personally recommend getting the VIP table on the stage. Then you get full menu, full bar, all that kind of stuff. Everything else you can get food through there. It's not a concession stand is not really like exactly what it is, but that's what we kind of call it. But yeah, that venue is outstanding. I am super psyched that they have that venue, and I've had conversations with Disruptor, and they, clearly seem to be having a continued good relationship, and it will be extending beyond what the original thought was. So I'm happy for it for sure.
Yeah, here's a couple of the matches we're going to see. Slim J and Vari Morales for the Disruptor Heavyweight title. And the loser of this match will not be able to challenge for that title again as long as the same person is the champion. We're going to be crowning the inaugural Party Animal champion in a three-way match between CB Suave, Matt Sells, and Man Scout Jake Manning. That should be a pretty entertaining match.
Did you see how Matt Sells made this match?
No.
So obviously Suave and Man Scout qualified. Matt Sells actually lost his qualifier, but apparently he blew a .24 leaving a Braves game, and they said that was enough qualifications to be in the Party Animal Championship for them. So he was back in, baby.
That's pretty incredible, and that may be a first. That may be a first in wrestling. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and I think the name of the title is the Influencer title.
The Verified Championship.
Verified Champion. I'm so sorry. Tim Miller defeated Randy Wentworth for this several shows ago. And on this show, it's going to be pick your poison. So they're each picking each other's opponent for this show. I like that this is going to be the third show with this same angle where they had the singles match. They were in the 6-man match. And then it's going to continue into the fourth show to kind of take what could have been a throwaway title, but it's made it, kind of a focal point of the promotion.
Yeah. Like they've made something out of this. They made a story that's continuing. Look, Tim Miller has a huge following in that building. So how smart was it for them to put this in there and run with it? And I just, like I said, I'm like you. It was how cool was it to actually because you want a story. And, because some people ask me are they putting matches? I'm like, no, there's stories there. You got to let them play out. It was like their first, second show. But yeah, I think hands down, how crazy is it though too? That's essentially you're involving a title that's not your title. The Verified Championship, right. That's Wentworth's title. That's not a Disruptor's. And then Suave Sells, Man Scout, Slim J and Vari, by the way, which I will probably argue. I want footage of this because this is probably if this isn't a match of the year candidate, I don't know what will be. That's all I can say on it. So
right. And again, all three of the matches we mentioned link back to the very first show. So Disruptor's doing a tremendous job of building angles, building storylines, building rivalries. And again, I don't know the behind the scenes workings, but kudos to Randy Wentworth, who may have just been a spot guy, but said, hey, I got this belt. Let's do. Kudos to everybody for making that something we're caring about.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, just to throw this in here before we move on, Hunter James is making his debut at Disruptor. He's teaming with Ivy Malibu and wrestling BK Westbrook, I think's his name. Sorry,
yeah, BK Westbrook.
And Ella Envy. It's a mixed tag with those two teams. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty awesome show. which
All right, so
based on that, by the way, that makes him a babyface. Hunter James for a change. So we're going to get a babyface Hunter James at the Disruptor.
Oh my!
I'm guessing.
All right, so here's the question: Are all the seats taken at your table on Saturday night?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I may have to. The more we've talked about it, I may have to change my Saturday plans and be at Tannery Row Ale.
There's a couch and a recliner right out there that you're more than welcome to crash on.
We'll have to see about that. Fans, we have since we're doing the show weekly, we're going to be doing some different things, and we've talked about some great matches coming up. But we wanted to take just a few moments to talk about what are some matches that we haven't seen in Georgia that maybe we would like to see. And I just want to throw some out and some of the reason behind it. Skrilla was the wrestler of the year for Georgia wrestling history last year. And I feel like coming off of that, he's lost some momentum. And that's no fault of his own, whatever. He obviously got the shot at Reality of Wrestling in Texas. He's doing some things that shows he lost the Mayhem Championship at IWE. But I would love to see Skrilla against, when I think about the top 10, 15, 20 wrestlers in Georgia, I want to see Skrilla get some opportunities against Cruel, against Judas, against Nick Halen, against Adam Priest, against Sean Legacy, Chip Day, Vari Morales. Like, I want to see some, it just seems like a lot of the top 20 are not facing each other.
I do think the best opportunity you're probably going to have is Deep South. They run at is it Das Barbecue? I think's the name of it.
Yeah.
They run there. I know he's got a thing going there with Zach Mosley.
Mm-hmm.
So at least, so that's probably going to be, and he's got some other people along the way. I think I just saw this announced, and I'm reaching deep here because this was literally, I think, late last night I saw this, or yesterday. I think he's working David Ali at that show, that Change show that they're running. In Atlanta. I believe it's in Atlanta. I got to check all the information. It's kind of new, so I was trying to catch up on it. But I believe he's wrestling David Ali at that show. So that will be, because here's the thing. What's the old saying? Iron sharpens iron.
Right.
We need to. Yeah, I want to see him against the guys, the other talents. Like, I would have loved to seen Bryce Cannon and Skrilla, because then you kind of start seeing, and like I said, like Chip Day's a good one. Some of those guys, and look, here's the thing. Who is it on promoters that are not making these things happen? That's the question. Like, why not? Why are they not making it happen? So I don't know, but yeah, I think we just want to see him in some more high profile situations in some of these other places. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, throw him in the deep end. We mentioned earlier Buff and Fluff winning the viral tag team titles. They certainly are starting to make their mark in Georgia. They're being featured in singles action there at Phoenix Wrestling Experience. But I would love to see Buff and Fluff versus the Grapplers, Happy Madness, Exotic Youth. We've seen them in IWE. I'm trying to think of, maybe teams they haven't faced. Hierarchy. Some of these teams from Action Wrestling. I think Buff and Fluff have something unique. They get a great reaction wherever they go, and they're not too bad in the ring either.
Right. The Approved, like, pull some of those guys out, Hawkins and Moore maybe, or something like that. Yeah, I mean, there's a tons of places but yeah.
I would love to see them, like, Southern Fried is a different kind of vibe, different kind of show, and I would love to see Legacy and Fluff Man in that kind of environment. It's something that I'm not used to seeing them. I'm used to seeing them at shows with high production and a certain element to it.
You want me to make a crazy prediction for you?
What's that?
This is, by the way, clearly it varies in promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Cody Fluffman's reaction at a promotion like Southern Fried would be off the charts. It'd be
Yes.
great. They would love
Yes.
him. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think he at Southern Fried, Fluffman is probably. I don't mean when I say he's the star of that team at Southern Fried, and that's by the way, no disrespect to Sean Legacy. I think that's the character development that we've seen in Cody Fluffman.
What if you could team Fluffman and Jacob Ashworth at Southern Fried? Holy cow.
The reaction you'd get.
Oh my goodness.
Here's the thing. You brought up a match. This is one Happy Madness versus Buff and Fluff. Because most people in their brain think, oh, this is just going to be your entertainment match. It's going to be your dude. You're completely underestimating the talents of Sean Legacy and Sal Rinauro in the ring. If they're going to go out there and they can wrestle. But by the way, they can entertain for days with Sunny Days and the Sal Rinauro character and the Cody Fluffman character. And it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean Legacy could have gone in one direction where he's like, I'm a serious wrestler. Like, I'm a wrestler's wrestler. That's it. Right. But he is embracing this character, this fun, package with him and Fluffman. And a lot of guys, this is tappedoutpod@gmail.com, by the way. I'm curious to see, are a lot of wrestlers afraid to make that move? Because here's the thing. In WWE, you better not be afraid to make that move.
Right. Right. I will be honest, and I don't know that I've said this publicly. I was wrong about Buff and Fluff because at the time, Sean Legacy was making a run at the Viral Heavyweight title. He had made kind of a name for himself in singles. I want to say at that point he had held some singles titles elsewhere. And so when he started, he and Fluffman, this is a real grew up together friendship. These guys are basically brothers, and they've been through a lot together. And when they formed this team, I was kind of like, oh man, but they have caught lightning in a bottle, and I was wrong about it, because it doesn't matter. They get a great reaction, and they're only getting better as a team. Here's another one. John Davis, the new Viral Pro champion. He doesn't wrestle a lot of places in Georgia. Man, John Davis versus Judas. John Davis versus Cruel. You think of all the big men in Georgia. Man, John Davis is one of my favorite independent wrestlers ever, because I just believe that dude. I had nothing fake about him, and he's just a bad man. And I would love to see any of that. And again, John may be working a condensed schedule in Georgia for reasons I don't know. But I'd love to see more of him. There are some other wrestlers we want to talk about that we've been seeing a lot of. But if you listen to this podcast in the Hot Hand and the Power Five, we've mentioned a lot of the same names over and over. So we wanted to take a moment on this episode to talk about some talents that may be underappreciated. And again, we would love your thoughts. Who are some underappreciated talents? tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Number one on this list, somebody we were both like, we haven't really talked about him that much, and that's Nick Halen, the Anarchy champion and a former Georgia Wrestler of the Year.
He shared and single. It makes. When I watched him wrestle this weekend, I sat there and thought to myself, like, how have we not? I think his biggest asset is his versatility. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, he's going to feud with Judas. Okay. Hey, you're going to feud with, Adrian Hawkins when they were having their they had a little thing going there about the approved stuff. Okay. Hey, you're going to feud with Todd Sexton. Like, you're going to feud now, now look, clearly the story is how much do you trust somebody? Right. By the way, let me get to the end because somebody's going to say I'm judging somebody and I'm not. How much do you have to trust a talent, the wrestler in the story, when it's the wrestler having a feud with the owner / promoter? Because look, David Manders isn't a wrestler. He's not, and he knows that. And I'm not, look, can he fight? That's a different argument. Like, but my point is, you go in there and you got to put a presentation in a ring. You got to have a lot of faith and a lot of trust in the person that you're putting in there. And if it goes down where it's a one-on-one situation with Halen versus Manders, I think that screams volumes of how much you trust and believe in Nick Halen. Because, I was on that train for a year, and I was telling everybody, best wrestler in Georgia, because of his versatility. And I was like, I think this topic, when we have it, what we'll find is like, we are as guilty as anybody of you see something that's so good for so long. Mm-hmm. We talked about this with Southern Honor. Remember, like we're so good for so long. Do you start to underappreciate the talent that's there? And I think he kind of is right there at the top of this list.
The thing that I've been thinking about Nick Halen since I knew we were going to be talking about him in this format is I've seen Nick Halen this year wrestle someone that was about, and I'm not going to say any names, wrestle somebody that was probably 2 or 3 levels below him. And I saw Nick Halen simultaneously pull back a little bit, but bring that person up effortlessly. Wasn't a struggle. And that is, you can probably count on one hand, the number of people that can do that in America on the indies. And he's so good. You just like, oh, okay. Like his footwork, his timing, all of that. Okay. You're just like, okay. Here's another person. And again, we talk about him because he's on a lot of shows. We don't really talk about how good he is, and that's Judas, Southern Honor champion, Southern Fried champion, one half of the Southern Fried Tag Team champions.
Yeah, and we just kind of go like, again, is this somebody who's just that good for so long? You get used to it, and then we've kind of like, oh, we didn't. So I think that's probably what happens with him because, and it could be another thing with Judas. NWA talent, like I've been banging the drum for 6 months now, and for maybe longer. He should be their champion. Like he should be the NWA champion. He is hands down, by far and away, in my opinion, and whether I'm right or wrong, if you put that title on him, I just think it looks credible. Like, oh, that's their champion? Okay. And I'm not knocking whoever has it now. I'm just saying, but that guy's got your belt? Okay, I'm in. So that's why I think that we probably lose a little bit because of that, because he doesn't wrestle, like he doesn't go south a lot to wrestle. And I think that's kind of what happens. But here's the thing. I'll tell you what I like about Judas. Very similar, by the way, taps into there's a very similar package when you talk about him and Cruel, in my opinion. Judas ain't working your undercard.
No.
He knows he's a main event guy. I'm not saying he won't work the match under the main, but he knows he's story 1 or 1B when he comes in. So. Right.
Yeah, that was the thing. When was the last time he worked anything but one of the semi-main event or the main event of a show?
Right.
Here's a name we both just 100% agree on, and that's Vari Morales. How is this guy not getting more love from Georgia?
I'm lost. When I talk to Vari, I tell her, he is. That's why I'm so excited about Slim J versus Vari Morales. I'm like, literally 2 of the best wrestlers you're going to see in Georgia on any given weekend, if you can see them. Like, Vari's a guy. Vari's a ticket guy. Like, you should buy a ticket to go see Vari Morales. that's, again, my humble opinion. Take it for whatever it's worth. I've seen him work, big shows. I've seen him work small shows everywhere. He doesn't throttle back.
No.
He's going to give you everything he's got at every show. And look, his character, the gimmick, whatever you want to call it, that's him. He's the Mexican rock star. And he's all in, dude. And when he goes out there, he'll tear the house down 100%.
He works at a different speed. He almost when I remember the first time I saw Daniel Bryan live, and you see how fast he runs the ropes, and it was a little bit faster than everybody else. And that's how I feel about Barry Morales. He's just at a different speed. Adam Priest is someone we're going to see Friday night. He doesn't wrestle a ton of places in Georgia, but this guy is getting his flowers nationally.
Yeah.
And just such a good wrestler, and just an unlikable character in a lot of ways.
He is. I've seen him, live and in person a few times, and there's a lot to love about him. But the biggest stamp of approval, I can't even say who it was, because there was a talent who said, like, he's the real deal. Like, he's when this person who told me that gives them that stamp of approval, I'm like, there are times, believe it or not, where I will say, hey, they know way better than I would ever know. And if they've got that person's seal of approval, then, they know way more than I do.
And then finally, here's a name. Again, I don't know how he's not getting mentioned, because he's a key player at multiple promotions, and that is Owen Knight. I've never seen Owen Knight have a bad match in person.
No. He's at Classic City. Mm-hmm. He's at IWE. He was viral, just as of this last show. It's not uncommon to see Owen. He had that big feud with Narcissism all over the state. He was at Southern Honor. So he's everywhere. He really is. And you're right. When we booked our show, we were doing I was trying to find, this is as crazy as it sounds, we were doing the 6-person tag match, and I had the international superstars on there, and I'm like, who is strong enough to be on that team and run? And obviously, what do we think of Owen Knight? That was my choice, that say, like, he could run with those teams.
Yeah, he's a great talent, and really just, I think, scratching the surface. And I was obviously didn't like the way he did it, winning the Viral Pro Heavyweight title and siding with the boss or whatever. But I would love to see a promotion give him the ball and let him run with it for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And he's just a good wrestler. Let's close out. We talk about this all the time. We talk about crowd numbers. There was every weekend there seems to be a little dispute about crowd numbers. Where do you think we are in regards to the talk about crowd numbers?
So I was having this conversation with a promoter and somebody else. It was weird. It was almost simultaneously. They overlapped. They weren't exactly what in Messenger. And I said, listen, do they matter? Of course they matter. But in a vacuum and in a bubble, maybe. What I mean by that is, so if you're running, no disrespect here, if you're running Royston, it's a less populated area. It's, and you're running multiple shows, there are going to be factors that affect your crowd size. They're not going to draw 400, every Friday, in the same place with the same, over and over and over. It's not going to happen. If you run every 2 months, it's more of a special event. Therefore, you better, in my opinion, draw a little more. But also, it's going to depend on things like we've talked about, like what's your budget, what you're paying everybody, how much money are you making. All these things come into play. So I think when I say the crowds, like, do they matter? Yes. We don't get on here typically and like bang the drum. Like when we were talking about SCA specifically, it was because of how it affects with these other promotions running it. So that's the part of the thing that matters. But if you're drawing 200 consistently, you're in a market and you're making money, good for you. That's a positive.
Right.
There could be a show if let me ask you this, and it's, by the way, will never happen. This is like, it never will happen. If Mucha Lucha drew a house of 500, we would all be like, oh my God, what happened?
Right.
So
Right.
500 is spectacular and a dream for a lot of promotions. But if Mucha Lucha does it, it'd be a bad day at the office. And again, I reiterate, that ain't going to happen with Ricardo running the show. But so that's what I mean. It's in a vacuum. I think you got to use it as a tool, compare your growth as a promotion.
Right. I remember back kind of as we were coming out of COVID, Action ran, I think it was a Friday night doubleheader, and they only sold 30 tickets to
Something
each
like
of
that,
the
yeah.
shows, but it was at a premium price, and they sold out both shows. So somebody might say, they only drew 30 people. I'm like, they sold out. They legitimately sold out. Didn't sell any more tickets. Like, the building wasn't full, but they at 30. I mean, I want to say it was like 30, 40, $50 maybe. It was a premium price.
Didn't we just have the same conversation about Disruptor?
Yes.
So
I think the two biggest questions for me: did you pay everyone? And here's what I mean by that. Did you number one, pay everybody at least what you agreed to pay them? And did guys come in expecting to get something versus nothing? There are, and people, when I talk to fans, casual fans, they are flabbergasted. They are shocked at what independent wrestlers make or don't make. When I tell them, oh yeah, those guys don't get paid for that show. What? Those guys are going out there and wrestling, and they might get $5. That's one thing I would love to see end in independent wrestling. We talk. I know guys have to have a place to work and they got to pay their dues, but I just think this idea that I don't know, it crosses the line into taking advantage of people at some point, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. Like, when we ran ours, there was a minimum number I set, not going into it. I know of a couple promotions that I know very well, and they are like, no, we don't pay anybody less than X. And they gave me the number, and I'm like, oh, it's respectable. I can live with that. And yeah, I think that's a thing. Like, there's probably a conversation about this. And I know a wrestler who wants to have this conversation about the pay. So I maybe do one of the coffee and cross faces with said wrestler, Will Huckabee, and he wants to discuss the pay. Like, he's got a strong opinion on pay and talents. So, maybe I share that with him. So who knows?
So after you have paid everyone, paid all your bills, then did you break even? Like, if you're just trying to break even and you're happy with that and you're running for fun, that's awesome. Or did you make money? At the end of the day, this is a business. This is not church softball. It's a business. And did you clear a profit? And again, we have seen shows. I mentioned the show earlier, Black Christmas. They drew 250, maybe, lost over $10,000. And yeah, so there's ways to run shows wisely where you take care of everybody, pay your bills, make a little money, and put on a good show. Those are not all mutually exclusive of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Fans, again, we would love to hear from you. We are now.
Hold on, man. I know you got somewhere to get. There's something I feel like we've got to address this week.
Okay.
It's something indie, but dude, this is crazy. I know we're weeks away from Southern Honor running again.
Yeah.
But absolutely the buzz of the internet for, the last week. That belt behind Roman Reigns in the internet post. Look, Keke Palmer, she's an actress. She's in this new movie coming out with Roman Reigns in it. It's actually going to be it's a comedy heist movie. It's going to be a pretty big deal. But to see the Southern Honor title literally, in that picture right behind Roman Reigns was a huge thing. It literally was everywhere on the internet. Everywhere.
Yes.
I will probably ask Dylan. Well, never mind. I'm going to stop right there because I was going to get an explanation maybe. But I actually want to get into the second thing. Like, it literally became a joke this week is Southern Honor Wrestling goes Hollywood. This week, their title is in there with Roman Reigns. And now they've come out and announced Cobra Kai, Blackbird, Golden Globe, Emmy winner Paul Walterhausen is literally going to be the matchmaker for a night at Southern Honor. And by the way, they're doing a meet and greet. You can come out and meet the guy.
That's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to be at that.
100%. I don't miss the Southern Honor show, but there's no way. I actually saw, Dylan Saturday and said, man, I got a question to ask him. I do a lot of movie podcasts that I love to listen to. And there was a rumor that came up on one of the podcasts about him. And I'm like, dude, I've got to ask them this question in person. Like, I am so intrigued that he was attached to a Quentin Tarantino movie. He was supposed to get it at one point. And I'm like, dude, was this true or was this just, rumor that was out there? So, but yeah, look, I know he's a big wrestling fan and again, there's a story to be told there. Maybe if you want it, it'll be behind a Patreon wall, or maybe it'll be on a YouTube or something in an interview. I got to get permission to even ask that story, and maybe I'll just get the story from the guy himself. So maybe that's, how we approach it. So
I remember, and I won't say how I first saw that picture, but it popped up on my feed. And that was just really, really, that's just really cool.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time. Who are the connections that your promotion has, that your booker has, that your promoter has? Because as a wrestler, if you can pay your dues and build that relationship, those connections become your connections.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a lot of behind the paywall stuff on the Double Dropkick show, talking about, hey, some promotions you're not getting anywhere. There's no connections. And like, you get paid and it's a good experience, but as far as that relationship paying off for you in any other way, it's just not happening. And Southern Honor is showing, if you're a wrestler and your ears aren't perking up, your eyebrows aren't raising over that picture, and Paul being at this show, you need to, if I'm a wrestler and I'm off that, I'm buying a ticket to that show.
Yeah.
Just to meet the guy. So yeah, that's going to be exciting. Yeah, we got a busy couple of weeks here wrestling wise.
Mm-hmm.
We make the drives and we talk about it. So fans, we want to hear from you. tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Don't forget, hit that like and subscribe button, hit the bell on YouTube, download wherever you listen to audio podcasts. But we are so grateful for your support of the Tapped Out Indie Wrestling podcast. This is going to be coming out. And then don't forget to watch the national show also with Nick and Myron, the Tapped Out Wrestling podcast. So for my man Nick, this is Heath Mulligan, and we'll see you next time.